Hi Sally, how you going?
I'm good, Zoe. How are you?
I am very well. I'm so glad to see you. Well,
I know it's good. I'm looking forward to chatting again because it's how long ago did we do our first podcast session?
I should have looked that up. I can't remember. End of last year, maybe
Yeah.
even like mid last year, a bit later. Yeah.
No,
Oh, it was on the future of work. Future of work, which was a certain month, maybe September or October. October, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I can't believe that much time's passed already. Like it feels like a lifetime ago.
I know, and so much has changed since then. So, yeah. So I thought I'd just get you on. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, how you've been affected or not by this current crisis that we're in.
So who am I? I'm Sally Illingworth. I always get pulled up actually if I don't say Sally A. Illingworth because so many people are like, oh, that's your LinkedIn name. So you sort of got to mention it. What do I do? Always hard to capture that in a very short way, but I do a lot of stuff, particularly around marketing, strategic communications, and sort of influence development and stuff like that. But then my interests extend way beyond that. So I'm always doing a whole bunch of different things, which keeps it good and interesting. And with the current situation, it's interesting. Like I've certainly been impacted, I suppose, from the standpoint of like where I do a lot of, say, content work. And I've had a few major sort of projects, if you like, that I've been working on for, several months before, COVID-19 sort of became a really big challenge for us all. So I was really excited because we were starting to develop some really good momentum around those projects. And it was sort of, we were just at the finish line getting ready to go into sort of full scale production, which requires that there's a whole bunch of people together in person doing filming and you're out and about at different places. So I've certainly been impacted quite quickly with that aspect of things, which has been frustrating, when it's sort of, it can feel a little bit discouraging. But at the same time, we've sort of just in some scenarios adapted how we're approaching those projects. So going a bit more virtual like we're doing now. And then in some cases, we're just putting things off, which is fine. But I suppose beyond those sorts of projects, I've been impacted, say, with like a lot of the sort of retainer-based, marketing services work that myself and my team offer. We haven't been impacted too drastically as of yet. I think probably much like everyone, I don't know about you, but I think the biggest challenge is not being able to have those sort of like face-to-face client interactions, which can make it really challenging. So yeah, like I've been impacted, but fortunately, I feel really grateful that it hasn't been as drastic as maybe it could be. But I'm certainly like, I've been working in the background preparing of like, okay, well, what's worst case scenario, whether it's budgets get pulled, because, the situation I'm in with a lot of the work I do, you can sort of deliver it remotely. So that's certainly a benefit. But I am certainly feeling deprived of human energy. So I feel like that's probably the biggest area of suffering for me at the moment is like, I really thrive on being with people and around people. So it's been really hard to deal with that.
Yeah, I'm also an extrovert, but I guess because I've done a lot of my work digitally in the past, I have found, which be interested in your thoughts, and this is the first time I've kind of verbalized it, that I now have like adapted to getting energy from people digitally. And I mean, watching stuff that you do on LinkedIn as well, obviously, you're very high energy. I find that when I'm watching stuff like that and, interacting with people on podcasts and things where maybe it is like not having a script. A lot of stuff online used to be, or still is, I suppose, very scripted. Like, you have a podcast interview or you do a webinar or you, I don't know, read a post on LinkedIn, which are all kind of scripted things. Whereas now it's a bit more ad hoc, it's a bit more spontaneous, it's not as much of an interruption or like a break. It's like, okay, well, let's just have a conversation about this.
100%. And I think, to your point about like now that I think because everyone's been forced to sort of use online resources a lot more to connect with one another, to your point about the scripting, I think we're in this interesting position where it's becoming okay not to be scripted. It's becoming okay to, have the dog barking whilst you're interacting with someone in a professional setting, virtually. So in that sense, the scripting's sort of gone out the window because people are realizing that, well, someone I was speaking to actually last week on the topic of, say, the future of work, was this interesting conversation. She's in the recruitment space, and she said that, oh, you know, this is sort of equalizing everyone, you know, because we're all working from home. You know, some of us on the best of days, we've all got trackies on underneath below the camera, you know, so everyone's really on a level playing field at the moment in terms of how we're interacting with other people. And so I think people, a lot of professionals, particularly say on LinkedIn, you know, are realizing that it's okay not to be scripted because we're all human. And I think this situation, you know, it's very unfortunate that it's happening, but I think there's certainly a lot of sort of incidental learnings from it. And it just reminds us to sort of really, one, empathize with each other, but just sort of remember that we're all human at the end of the day, you know. I think there's sort of that, you know, bizarrely sort of like cool, like realization out of this whole situation for everyone. So get rid of the scripts and just let's get back to a really human level, which is awesome for the future of work.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think like when we're, you know, the dog barking or whatever, and people with children, you know, there's so many kids on, you know, in the background of video conferences now, and it's just like, oh, hang on, I've got to go, I've got, you know, this happening or whatever. And we've kind of accepted those things a bit more, like you're saying. I think that's really important because, yeah, we are all in this together and we are moving forward in this, but yeah, we can only do that if we're kind of kind to each other and kind to ourselves, to know that, okay, this is a weird situation, no matter whether you're used to it or not, to just like be thrust into this. It's a weird situation. So we need to really, I guess, take care of ourselves and our connections and our colleagues and that human aspect of it as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, if I remember correctly, when we were speaking last year on your podcast, it was, you know, a big part of the conversation was around the future of work. And, you know, I think there's so many different awesome perspectives, you know, on what the future of work looks like, you know, what it's going to feel like, how we're actually going to deliver on that, execute on that. And I think this scenario, you know, obviously has sort of put, you know, business, if you like, so on both sides of the fence, employee and employer, in the position where we've really got to quickly connect with maybe what the future of work is likely to look like, you know, beyond COVID-19, because we're in this situation where we've all had to go virtual, we're working remotely, which for many was something that, you know, they procrastinated about, or it was just such a far-fetched thought to think that, oh, well, we don't need our 3,000 square feet of office space to do our jobs. Like, no, that's not possible. But now we're in this position where we're really forced to adapt quite quickly and explore maybe how things can be done, you know, more effectively and efficiently using technology. And then, so although post-COVID, you know, things will revert to some sort of normality, I think our thoughts about what's normal and our belief in what's possible, you know, those things are really going to change, which really speaks to that notion of sort of the future of work and maybe what that looks and feels like, which is, you know, going to be supported largely by things like tech. And I know you're sort of very focused on like the smart community space, you know, and sort of the future of work. I suspect, if, and maybe I'm wrong, like, yeah, that's sort of like one of the little micro elements within smart cities and how things work. And
absolutely, yeah, I mean, it's a huge element of it, because, you know, the way that we work, and even more so now, is being completely integrated with our whole lives, right? You know, I don't just get up and go to work, and you'll be the same. We live and breathe it. We do take breaks, obviously, and, you know, just do regular personal stuff or whatever, but we're passionate and values driven, and that's what our work is as well. And I think that in smart communities will become much more normal. And, you know, we still will work for different places and do different things, but I think that values driven, and maybe it's a millennial thing, that we want to have purpose in the work that we do, which, you know, when we look at tech and look at what tech can enable, we can access so many different things, and we can actually pick and choose a little bit. I mean, and what COVID-19 has done is it's kind of going, well, okay, what's that, like we're doing these things, but now how do we not necessarily pivot, because I don't think we need to pivot. I think we can keep doing what we're actually doing, depending on what you're doing, obviously, but actually we can deliver it a little bit differently. So the values there, the purpose is still there, all those things are the same. We just can adapt to the way we're delivering it, which it sounds like that's what you're doing with the work that you've now progressed further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think speaking to values is a really important thing. And I know that, for example, myself personally, like, for as long as I can remember, one of my big values has sort of been, for me personally, is that, my work isn't separated from my core identity. My work, I'm really fortunate to sort of, don't get me wrong, there's crap days, right? And there's certainly been times where you're like, oh my God, I just need out, it's too hard, it's too much. But for the most part, like, my work has always been a big part of my identity and a part of, and usually in most cases, apart from when I found myself, sort of in situations where it's not, then I need to make change. But it's always been a large reflection of my values and what I value. And, I think in this situation, because we are sort of all having to, adapt and work from home and so forth, I think a lot of people are now in the position where that sort of forbidden thought of, taking your work home with you, it's a reality now, and everyone's taken their work home with them because they have no choice in most cases but to do that. And so I think, there's probably a lot of us that are going through this interesting sort of like personal sort of like self-discovery process at the moment, where it's like, okay, well, my work is maybe now more connected to my personal life than it's ever been. And is there value alignment there? Is my work a reflection of what I value and what I want to be doing, and what adds purpose to my life? That whole purpose beyond profit sort of concept, whether it's profit through sort of you get paid as an employee or profit as a business owner. And so I think, like, in a sort of, maybe I don't classify myself as spiritual, but in some sort of spiritual way, I think a lot of people are going through that process at the moment and really trying to connect with, what am I doing, and what's actually the purpose of my work here? Like, why am I doing this? Like, does it align to me and who I am? Because work has sort of been put in this position where it's more personal for most people than it's ever been before. And a lot of people were in the position where they could separate it and they could, not take their work home with them. But now they've had to take it home with them. I think it's a really good time for like reflection about, what you value and what adds meaning to your life.
Absolutely. And I think, I've been thinking about that as well, but I haven't articulated it like that. It's not necessarily like good or bad. I think that's, we need to get out of this headspace that we're just like, well, that's good and that's bad, and, they're the only two options, because it is about reflection. Like, there's literally no choice for a lot of people to bring their work home with them, or that they have to then leave their home, which is different, like a different place, and go into the world, which is very different as well. So on both sides, there's a lot of reflection happening. But I think it is a really good time to actually reflect on those things. And, it's not to say that we're going to quit our jobs and, start a business, because, is that the best time to do so? Who knows? Maybe it is for some people, but actually you can start thinking about these things, having reflections, and work out what you want to do once we get through this, crisis, and, what that will look like and how we can shape that as well. Because I think you're right. This, when we go back to normal, it won't be normal. We'll have different views of what is actually normal. So, it will be a really interesting time.
Yeah. Is there any part of like what's going on at the moment that's sort of like, I know it's a really unfortunate situation, but like, I'm always about looking for like the positives or the learnings. Like, for you personally, do you find that there's like any aspect of like something that's making you excited about maybe what we're learning about this current situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, I agree with you. We don't want to make light of the situation because so many people are, suffering right now. But there is opportunity in a crisis, and learnings, learnings definitely, challenges definitely, but so many opportunities. For me, like the smart community space, I've been talking about getting access, connectivity. It's really important for communities, yada, 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 for a long time now. And sometimes you like stop believing it yourself because you feel like you're the only one that thinks it's important. And that's not the case.
Crazy.
Yeah, like just like, oh, am I getting crazy here? No one else seems to think this. And I do have some awesome, obviously, people that are doing this stuff with me and working in the space. But sometimes, you can just go, oh God, is this just the way it is? Whereas now it's really this like it's like a big beaming spotlight. If you do not have connectivity, you are actually separated from the current world, which is not okay. So what are we doing about this? And right now we might not be able to lay fiber or, do all those things, but we can actually start thinking about this and then focusing in on what we want for our communities in the future. And that's both from a community level, so actually going, oh, we need this, and then, advocating for it, but then also from a government industry level going, okay, what do we need to focus on? How are we going to do this? Because right now, if you're not connected to the internet, you have no idea that we're in a crisis. You're just hanging out. I don't know what you're doing. But even if if you have limited connectivity, then you can't actually access the world. Like if you were working before, what are you doing now? If you don't have an internet, and if you're trying to go to school now, how are you actually doing that? So there's so many things, and so many people are slipping through the cracks. And I think the digital divide has really exploded, but we're not necessarily thinking about that yet. And obviously there's a critical health issue, but these two things link so closely together. We can't separate them anymore, because if you don't have human connection, you don't have information, then you can't make positive health choices. You can't, your mental health suffers, all these type of things. So yeah, there's definitely opportunity in this space. But as like everyone, I've been feeling the collective heaviness of everything that's happening, and I also had a lot of work, a lot of pipeline, but particularly for speaking, and how am I going to shift and change that? But I've been quite busy lately doing these online workshops and that type of thing to actually upskill people and increase that digital literacy, which I'm so excited about ours tomorrow night. That should be really fun. But also, yeah, taking this time to reflect, like you said, because I think not everybody, people, there's kind of like a few different camps, everyone's, it's like, oh, I'm doing nothing and watching Netflix and chilling. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how you have time for that, but okay, cool. And then people that are like even more busy doing the same stuff they're doing. And then you've got people that are actually shifting and changing and pivoting because they have to. Well, then you've got there's probably a number of different camps that I've missed, but I also think like we're all in this together, which it can be quite, big warm global hug.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, how are we gonna learn from this and move forward in this space?
Yeah, there are two of the things you just mentioned. Like one, I think digital divide. Like that's a really interesting point, and say, that relationship between digital and the health sort of space, if you like. I mean, yeah, even with the current situation, I think it's really highlighted the digital divide between sort of the health sector, and technology, and therefore our ability to remain informed, with reliable, trustworthy, validated data and all that sort of stuff. It's a big challenge. I'm actually sort of working with a couple of people who sort of they do like spatial stuff with like geography mapping and whatever. It's not my space, right? Like that skill set in that profession, and working on consolidating some data from government sources to try and help sort of map out, well, where are these, vulnerable communities across Australia? Because currently, as it stands, we sort of reactively, government and other other entities are trying to work to sort of aggregate and consolidate this information so that on a day-to-day basis we can be informed. We know what's going on around us with relation to the current pandemic, but then also sort of at a higher level of leadership, if you like, the right decisions can be made. So yeah, I agree. Like I think there's a massive digital divide there, and this situation is really highlighted, I think, where we've got a lot of opportunities and there's sort of those gaps for improvement in that space. Particularly at a higher level of leadership. And the other thing I love that you mentioned is like the sort of like collective heaviness, and then like this big global virtual sort of hug. Like, yeah, like I know, it's interesting on that note. Especially because sort of in isolation, like I've been trying to really force myself, like make the time, go out for a walk more, like and just go for a walk, get some exercise, get out, do things, because you find you're sort of quite, a lot more sort of sedative, like, and sort of sticking around and stuff like that. And the heaviness of the empathy, I really feel myself feel when I'm walking down, say, the highway, and it might be 7 o'clock at night, and I walk past, and there's someone with an Indian restaurant, Chinese restaurant, whatever it is, and you can see that likely, I'm presuming in some cases, the owner usually has a particular presence about them, standing there, and they're trying to keep the doors open and service people through food delivery and whatnot, and that it just doesn't make economic sense. And just seeing that is such a heavy thing to see, like the impact it's having on people. And so I think for myself, on that note of like, there's a collective heaviness about it. I know I said at the beginning of this, like, I personally am fortunate to be in a position where my ability to adapt in this situation was sort of, quite seamless. It's been quite seamless today. But just because I haven't been impacted maybe as much as some other, groups and sort of camps, as you call them, but you really feel it. And I know that my empathy, radar has just gone through the roof. And I'm like, it's heavy. It's really heavy to see. And I think, particularly to say the food space, having spent 8 years dedicated to that industry, I already know how difficult it is from, a margin management perspective and all that for those types of business owners. And to just see people, at scale in that position, it's heavy. I think that's the perfect word to describe it. It's really heavy. I think having that empathy between everyone is really critical right now, so that, we're making the best decisions for ourselves, our businesses, our families, our colleagues, whatever the situation is, but also making decisions that are considerate to our local economies, and then also, broader economies that we contribute to. Yeah, it's such a bizarre experience, right?
It really is. And I was going to go to, your background in the hospitality sector. You must have friends that, former colleagues and, that are in this space that are really suffering at the moment. And I don't know if there's any tips or tricks that, you've come across from them that how they're coping in this time.
Certainly still know a lot of people, still engage with a lot of people routinely. A large part of my identity still sits in that industry, because one, I sort of always have appreciated how important it is, especially say in Australia, the food retail space is, that industry is such a large employer for Australia. I know it's really important, even if you look at things in terms of workforce, development and people entering the workforce, how many people they start at McDonald's, when they're 14 and 9 months or whatever it is. But one thing, I don't think there's certainly no quick fixes or nothing that sort of is a silver bullet and can just help those businesses drastically. I think, there certainly is very much case by case, right? Because depending on the level of pain you're feeling, your ability or the business's suitability to adapt, to be able to tap into, say, maybe food delivery and so forth with aggregators. It's so hard to say there's one approach that can definitely help every type of food business at the moment. But I think what's, really important, if it makes sense for the business at the moment, one thing that sort of is a bit more generalized that a lot of these businesses are looking at, and sort of most of them should be, is, okay, well, we may be suffering in the interim, but what sort of, at least from a branding perspective, right, or a marketing perspective, so we can continue to connect with our customers, even though maybe we can't serve them right now, or they don't have the propensity to pay and, order with us, even if we've got the doors closed. What can we do to continue building that brand equity around, the food we love and that we would usually cook and deliver to a customer, or that dine in and experience with us? Is that, for example, adapting to, getting on camera and doing home cooking classes, and talking to your audience and saying, right, so, our actual kitchen's closed, but I'm going to show you, for example, this is how we make one of our secret sauces. And you might not give away all of those trade secrets, but trying to find ways where, they're common sort of points of interest, if you like. So you may have particular items, usually a food business does, on their menu that they know are just the favorites, right, or the chef's recommendations. How can you sort of use those things that people invest a lot of emotion in with your business, and start trying to share that on a virtual level and connect with people whilst they're at home and maybe your business is closed? I think that's something really important. And from a business owner perspective, not everyone's like this, but I know I'm like this. I was always like this in the food space, and food's such an emotional thing, right? So most food business owners or operators are really emotionally connected to the food they cook. So it just gives you also a bit of, I wouldn't say it's motivation, but it's sort of at least some positive energy where you can continue focusing on maybe some of those little things that you love, like making your favorite sauce or cooking your favorite deep fried chicken. I love deep fried chicken, but yeah. And how can you sort of just yourself to emotionally deal with what's going on? You know, and that really allows you to stay in touch with why you got started in the first place. Because I know for me that, you know, when I was in the food industry pre-COVID-19, I had to deal with a whole bunch of challenges around the economic viability of the models because the margins are so small, and then how, you know, what's your rent cost, and well, that doesn't align to support this business model. And one thing that sort of kept me sane, if you like, that's not the best word, but throughout that entire process was constantly remaining connected with, why did I start this in the first place? What am I passionate about in my food business? So that's probably a really long answer for it. But yeah, I think just trying to get creative so that you can find those really emotional triggering areas of your food business to connect with people virtually, even if they can't buy right now. But they sort of, you know, they can become sort of nostalgic about the whole thing. Yeah.
And they'll remember those things, right? When we come out the other side as well. No, I think that's a really nice tip to, yeah, and obviously it's not going to be applicable for everybody, but yeah, I really like what you said about remembering why you started in the first place, because I think we can lose that. I mean, even without food, like food's like that emotional thing, but you know, sometimes I forget that as well, and I need to remind myself of why I started this thing in the first place.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's usually on the bad days where you're like, why am I doing this? And you're like, no, the right question is, why did I start this in the first place? Okay, this is why, and that's the same thing that's going to get me through it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about uncertainty, because I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, you know, you can have kind of bad days or whatever, or bad weeks, but right now it's like, we don't know how long this is going to go on for, you know, all those things that are happening. What are your thoughts on, or, you know, how do you deal with uncertainty? That's
such a question, right? Like, it's so, you're like, oh my God, how do I answer this? Like, you know, I think personally, I'm a very firm believer of, you know, that there's always uncertainty. And I think most people are sort of really in touch with that. Obviously with this, you know, it feels like, I think for most of us, this current situation, it's really made us feel like we have absolutely no control over anything, you know, because things we take for granted, like the ability to go and hang on a beach, or, you know, the ability to just, you know, I don't know, you know, hug a whole bunch of people in public, like these things that you didn't think were privileges, you know, or anything like that, that's all been taken away from us. So I think when it comes to uncertainty in the current environment, it's like, for me, it's been completely redefined. Like, I'm like, okay, well, I thought before that, you know, when I think about uncertainty, I think about, okay, you know, am I still going to be, you know, fortunate to be able to deal and engage with this client in 3 months' time? Or, you know, I'm uncertain potentially, you know, what if I get cancer, you know, when I get older? Like, it was such, uncertainty was so, sort of, it was a lot more categorized, I think, and it was a lot easier because we just focus on key things, maybe health and wealth and family and stuff like that. But now, for me, I know personally, it's just been completely redefined, and it's like, well, I'm uncertain about my comfort with giving someone a kiss on a cheek when I greet them, you know, like, and so it's like a completely new way of thinking about it. In terms of dealing with it, I've always done my best to remain really honest with myself in every situation, even if it's a really great situation, and go, don't think that anything is certain here. You know, things change, and that's just the way of life. But I think particularly in this current situation, this is personally, you know, and it's a personal development thing, it's really sort of demanded for me to focus on, what can I control? You know, okay, I can control, you know, what I consume right now. And that might be from a diet perspective for the benefit of my health. It might be what I consume online in the form of content, which is going to influence my, you know, my thinking, and therefore my feelings, and therefore my decisions. So I've really just sort of anchored back to that and gone, well, what can I control right now? And consumption and consumption of different things in different ways is a big part of that, because I think particularly during this time, you know, there's nothing worse than doing things that are going to make you more anxious about the uncertainty. So for me, it's been trying to get clear on, what are the things I can eliminate or remove that may make this massive sense of uncertainty, and I don't even know how to think about uncertainty anymore. How can I remove the things that will possibly make my feelings towards uncertainty worse? So that's been a big thing for me. It's just getting clear on what can you control right now, to try and better manage the situation, because I don't think there's anything I could do. I don't know, it'd be cool to hear if someone else has got a solution. Maybe you've got one. Like, I don't feel like I can remove the discomfort of uncertainty, and I'm completely okay with that. So it's just, how do I sort of control that uncertainty and the impact it has? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sitting in the uncertainty, and I don't know if you've had the same situation, but, you know, I took a lot of risk when I left my good, secure job, and there was lots of uncertain things. And it was probably even more uncertain back then than it is now, because I know at least now, you know, what the hell I'm doing in my business, I suppose. Whereas before I had a plan, but it was like, looking back, it was full of holes. There was no way I had enough safety net to run a business, or, you know, a podcast. You know, you have to pay people to do that, or do it yourself, etc. So I feel like I can sit in uncertainty, but I definitely have days where I'm just like, oh my God, overwhelmed. And what I do is I work with, you know, I've got a key task, a team of people, I should say. You know, I've got a mentor, I've got my naturopath, I do these things to work on my energy and make sure that I can continue to function, because I know that when I'm overwhelmed, it's not useful to anybody. It is sometimes like, it feels, what's the word? It feels relieving to be kind of overwhelmed, because then you tell yourself you can't do anything more, if that makes sense, which is really this weird thing, because just like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm just going to sit on the couch, watch Netflix. But actually that needs to be even more overwhelmed. So I think dealing with overwhelm has been my number one thing. And when I know that I can talk to certain people that then can bring me back, because I get stuck in my own head of going round and round and round. And, you know, that I don't know, I have no idea what the future's going to look like, but actually sitting in that uncertainty. But what I do find useful is that I actually have a plan. I have my, you know, and you know, a financial plan, as well as, you know, well, this is what I'm doing for the next, even like, I don't need to plan as far in the future now, not even COVID, but just in general, because I know things change so rapidly. But I do have a plan that changes, you know, it's flexible, whatever, that I go, okay, well, the worst case scenario, this is what's going to happen. And, you know, these things will happen, these things will trigger, whatever. Anything better than that, that's great. And that's high five. So I do find that now that I have staff, like I feel more responsible to be more responsible, because it's not just me anymore. And so I think that helps, sometimes increases overwhelm, but other times it helps to, like, you know, get your shit together and just be like, okay, I've got to do this. So yeah, and like, I always have a lot going on. I would say to my mentor, oh gosh, I wish I didn't have so much going on. And she said, no, you don't. Like, this is all you're doing, right? Like, it's not like anyone else is going, oh, here, Zoe, here, do this, do this, do this, do this. So I find that, for me having a lot going on, not too much, but a lot, and that looks different for everyone, actually helps me, because I find that I can then know, oh, well, if I'm not doing that task, I can do that task, and I don't relax very well, which is an issue until I've kind of got my ducks in a row. When I've got a plan, I can relax. But if I don't have a plan, which, you know, can change day to day, it does mess with my psyche a little bit.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned, like, about having so much going on. I know, like, for example, I'm quite the same way. Like, there's just always so much happening. And I do the same thing every week. I look at my calendar and I'm like, why the hell why the fuck do I do this to myself? Like, what have I done? Like, this is insane what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no more. I can't. It's just too much, you know. And then you're like, keep doing it. And it's like, I obviously get a thrill out of this. I thrive in that environment. I personally thrive really well under pressure. So don't, just because someone else might say it doesn't work for them and it's not right, don't think that it's the same for you, because if that's how you thrive, then you've got to go with it. You've got to run with it. And on your note about, like, oh my God, I wish I didn't have as much to do. I know, like, in like sort of really close circle, not exactly a circle, but some people really close to me, it's like I'm famous for saying, oh my God, is that the time already? Because you just got so much going on, you lose track of time. And it's like my famous line every single day. And like, it'll get to like 7 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my God, is that the time already? And so like people close to me just like joke about it all the time, because they're just like, you just say that all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? It's because I've got a lot going on, much like you. And it's like, and I'm just so immersed in what I'm doing, which I think is something I'm really grateful for, that I get into those zones. And of course, there's some things where you're like, I really don't want to do this. Like, you know, like for example, if it's trying to sort of review some stuff to do with accounts, I'm like, you know what? I'm not interested in this stuff. Like, don't worry, we'll just do everything for free. I don't really care, you know, like, and then I get in trouble. It's like, no, that's
mental.
But I think it's awesome, you know, like if you really, sometimes it can be good to have a lot going on. You know, I think for some people, maybe that helps to remove some of the overwhelm, because it keeps your mind busy, you know, and I think that's the key, is trying to figure out what's the best sort of, you know, fertilizer, if you like, for your brain, for your mind, for your energy at the moment. What's going to help you better manage the situation? Is it a better diet? Is it more exercise? You know, is it keeping yourself busier? Is it finding a new hobby to do that you can do under isolation conditions? Like, what is it? Because to your point about, you know, say like your naturopath and your energy management, you know, I personally like sort of really, like, I can really resonate with that, because particularly in recent months, it's been a big thing, is like, your energy is so important. You know, what are you giving your energy to? What's taking your energy, maybe like, you know, without your sort of choice? And then what are you feeding yourself? Not just food, but other things like external stimulations and stuff, to what's impacting your energy, because it's such a critical thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, to your point of, different people need different amounts and different types of like fuel and feeding, right? And for me, like, I find when I'm busy and I have a lot on, I actually get more done, because there's no time for procrastination. One thing I need to watch is the exercise, right? And I've been exercising more than I would before, because it's literally right here, like in my office. And you know, my PT goes live at 6:30 in the morning, and I get there and I do my thing, and then it's done. And then, you know, in the afternoons it's yoga or whatever. So yeah, and again, it'll be different for everyone, but I guess, working out and that reflection, let's just go back to your point at the very start, which is about reflection, and then actually work out what's working for you, because we're all different. We all will, you know, adapt differently. And I think we need to really nourish those things that are serving us at the moment, which can be hard to find out, or hard to like kind of figure out. But I think if you work on that reflection and look inwards, which sounds very spiritual, which is not really my deal either. But I think, during this time, like there's not really a lot we can do. There are many things we can control, but there's so many things outside of our control. But I think if we look at those things, like you said, that we can control, and then do that reflection, I think hopefully we can have a better time moving out of this.
Yeah, and to add to that, I 100% agree. I'm really aligned to what you just said. And I think, one of the biggest challenges of going through that process can be for people, and it's just about preparing yourself for it. Sometimes when you go through that reflection and you really look at what's going on, what's going to serve me better, what do I need to change? Sometimes we don't like the answers we find, and so we have to confront with that. So it's like, think about, like the bigger purpose here of why you're doing this. Like, I know myself, right? I was actually with a very good friend of mine, sort of like a health consultant to me. And he's like, I don't know the technical words for it, but he studied all this stuff, alchemist, naturopath, path, all this, degrees and stuff. And one of the things he said to me is like, you need to up your intake of this. You need to do this. And of course, I'm sitting there confronting him with that, going, do I look like I've got time to do all this stuff? And it's like, I might not want to do that. Or maybe it challenges my pride because I'm the type of person who's always sat there and gone, I'm fine, I don't need anyone's help. Like, yeah, like I've got no personal health challenges. And so you got to confront with that and go, no, like pride, step aside, just deal with this. Because you need to do it. But if you're not ready to confront with that and sort of let your ego be challenged, it can be hard. But I think to your point, just that sort of like continuous reflection and just really try and connect with like, what's the reason I'm doing this? Like, I identify this, I kind of need to do something about it. Because actually how my friend explained it to me on the weekend, he said, okay, so you want all these problems to go away and these things to change? I said, yeah. He said, okay, let me explain something to you. He said, if you're in the car and you're driving to Canberra, you're going to get to Canberra. He said, if you don't want to go to Canberra, you've got to do a U-turn and turn around. And he's like, if you don't do the U-turn and turn around, you're going to go to Canberra whether you want to or not. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like you said before, with that's a choice, right? That's a decision that we have control over. But also linking that work and personal together, like whether we like it or not, we need to do these things for both of our, both parts of our brains and both parts of our lives, which, for you and I, they are very much entwined, but for some other people, like that's going to be an even harder transition. But, a really vital one for the future work, for the future life in general. So it's going to be interesting times.
I know. I'm sort of really keen to see what's on the other side of this, not just to sort of revert to some sort of normality, but just like what's on the other side, how do we change about the way we think, how we feel, how we behave. I think I'm nervous about probably the scarring that may sort of survive this, little things like I was actually speaking to a contact maybe 2 weeks ago and they've developed a sort of a technology solution, if you like, software solution to try and help with managing queues, So, and like the concept is kill the queue, like use these scheduling tools as the business to communicate with people who want to come and visit you so that you can kill the queue. Because obviously at the moment we have to keep that distance and, just talking about solutions like that, which is so exciting. You're like, I love tech. I know you're really fascinated by tech as well. It's like, this is so exciting, but it's like kind of sad as well to think that, there's going to be scarring beyond this, because even when we are allowed to, be next to each other, really close to each other, I know myself personally, there's probably going to be an element of scarring there where maybe I'm a bit nervous to be that close to someone because we don't know what we can trust anymore. So like that part sort of freaks me out a bit. So I think the more we can get in touch with understanding, like, sort of, I don't know, what's our role in the other side of this? What can we do to not only help the people we already serve, but how can we better maybe contribute to making, it prosperous on the other side of this, so we don't lose touch with like humanity.
Yeah, that global scarring, that's a really, I don't want to say good way to put it, but that's definitely going to be a concept that we need to deal with, because, for our generation, this is one of the most difficult things globally that we've gone through. Obviously, we all have our own personal, scarring that's gone along the way, but this will be a collective scar. And whereas generations before us have had those events and, maybe we looked at them and went, oh, what does that mean? Like, well, I can't understand why you would think like that. But now we'll have our own that, the younger generation will be like, COVID, what's that?
I think I found the word I've been using to describe trying to digest the whole situation is fathom. Like, I think, maybe some other generations have been through not this experience, but similar things where maybe they have a bit more of an understanding about it. They can not make sense of it, but, they can understand it a lot, maybe a little bit easier or quicker than maybe younger generations can. But because, the big thing I've struggled with is how do you fathom what's going on right now? It's so difficult.
Yeah, that's Luke. I was trying to remember who said that to me. Luke Stowe said that to me. Well.
You probably heard it from me. He steals all of my advice. No.
Yeah, we did discuss you on the podcast, actually.
He did mention that to me. He said he threw in a bit of a joke.
Yeah. I'll have to listen when I release it. Anyway, what's the time? Okay, we better wrap up. It's been
forever, right?
I know. And we're gonna see each other tomorrow night, which is gonna be so exciting.
And then I'll be live very soon as well when I organise my ridiculous schedule. But if you're still up for it, yeah, I'd love to have you on LinkedIn.
Love to, whenever you organise that, let me know. I'll be there. That'll be, again, so much fun. I really am enjoying, as much as I can, these interactions that I'm having with people that aren't scripted, like we were talking about. So, yeah, I love to continue those and look for other opportunities as well, because there will be so many opportunities. And I think, we will go through these, phases, I think, where we're grieving, we're healing, we're overwhelmed, we're, ready and fighting, there's going to be these phases. And I think as a collective, we'll have those. And then I'm hoping that, this online world, and if we can solve this digital divide problem as well, can really serve people in this time that is so heavy for a lot of us.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay, well, I was going to say bye. Anything else you want to add?
No. Other than, awesome to chat to you. I think when we do the LinkedIn Live, we're going to have to pick one topic, have a little bit of a script there, because I did like a 54-minute LinkedIn Live the other week. Yeah. I don't think people are used to tuning into content that long on LinkedIn, so there's still a bit of learning to go there. Yeah. Anything to add? Thanks so much for your time. As always, trying to chat to you again, and obviously see you tomorrow night for the session. Yes. I'm just so excited. I think it's going to be great. And we've got another one, if people miss that one, I don't know when this is going to go live. So this might go out afterwards. Yeah. But anyway, we'll say bye and we'll talk soon. Bye. See ya. Bye.